he should not presume to arrogantly dictate to people here how we will conduct our affairs. Those days are over. The words of Gerry Adams hitting back at the Secretary of State, Owen Paterson, who says he's no intention of holding a border poll on Irish unification. Mr. Adams says such a poll is inevitable, and he joins us on the line. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
Thanks very much for joining us. You're not mincing your words in the way in which you have dismissed the position of the Secretary of State. Why have you been quite so tough about this? Why are you so convinced that the poll is inevitable?
Well, first of all, I tried to contextualise Owen Paterson's remarks. Owen Paterson's a unionist. The party he belongs to had to be pulled kicking and squealing into the peace process. He isn't the most clever British Secretary of State we've had to deal with. He's blocked an inquiry into the killing of human rights lawyer Pat Finucane, despite the fact that that's an intergovernmental agreement. He's blocking a Bill of Rights. He's refusing to deal with the issue of the killings in Ballymurphy on the night of interment. His imprisonment of Marion Price is entirely unjust. It's very, very, very stupid, and he's been less than helpful on other matters. Now, the issue of a border poll is one which will give people here the opportunity of saying whether they want to continue with the Union or whether they want to see a united Ireland. And by definition, we will see a united Ireland when we have a union, a new union of Catholic Protestants and dissenters across this island. And Mr. Paterson will have no say at all on that issue.
But it's the use of language I wanted to pick up on first of all, and we can talk about some of the details in a second or two. I mean, some people might think that, might be slightly surprised that you were quite so outspoken a phrase like arrogantly dictate. You could have said what you wanted to say in a slightly less dogmatic way, perhaps.
Well, perhaps I could, but I choose to use that language because I think it's important, as those of us who live here seek to build new friendships and to build a new dispensation. That means that we're sensible, that we're sensitive, that we are listening proactively. And this man who comes to us from London periodically intrudes into our affairs in what I consider to be a most unacceptable and arrogant way.
Oh, and you used the phrase, not one of the most adroit or skillful British Secretaries of State to have been imposed on us. Nonetheless, whether you like or dislike him, whether you like or dislike the decisions that he's taken, he is the Secretary of State, and as part of the Good Friday Agreement, he is the individual in whom the decision on a border poll is vested. He chooses not to have one at the moment, and that's the way it will be. And you have to accept that is the way it will be until he or his successor changes his or her mind.
Fair enough. And by the way, this isn't personal, and I accept what you are saying. What's important is that we have a debate on this issue. I find more and more people are questioning across the island because of the economic crisis in the south, the peace process in the north. There's more and more people questioning what type of Ireland we need to have, what type of Ireland there should be. People are talking about the future. Are very much an island people in transition. Now, there may be those out there who don't want to see a united Ireland, and that's fair enough. Sinn Féin have organised a series of conferences. The two in the north, Newry and Derry, had very large attendances, not least from the unionist section of our people, and had two unionist speakers who, of course, took the opportunity to set out their opposition to a united Ireland. But what was remarkable was the good-humoured, respectful and tolerant way in which that debate was discussed. And I think that's where the majority of thinking people are at this time, that they're prepared to tolerate and argue and debate these issues out.
Why do you think now is a good time for the border poll to take place? I mean, presumably what would motivate a Secretary of State to decide to have such a poll would be the belief that there might well be a mood for change. Now, if he looks at the current situation in the Republic, if he looks at various polls that suggest that there wouldn't be a huge wind for change in the current circumstances, that presumably is what has led him to the decision that now is not a good time. Why do you think now is a good time? Why do you think a majority of people in Northern Ireland would vote for such dramatic change?
Well, first of all, let's get real about this. Such a decision will not be taken by a British Secretary of State. It will be taken by a British government. It will be taken by a British government when an Irish government asks them to do so, and that will happen when the debate has been brought to a critical point where more and more people are engaging in it. Now, there are two ways of looking at the border poll, and Sinn Féin is still discussing this out internally. One school of thought within the party thinks we should be calling for a border poll now, even though we might not necessarily win it. That would at least have a good focus for a debate.
And is that your school of thought?
Well, we will decide this at an Ardcordia meeting within the next, certainly before the Ardèche. The second school of thought is hold off, with a huge job of work to do, not least in convincing unionists that their future lies in a united Ireland and a new Ireland, that the debate needs to deepen, that it needs to be broadened and become more and more inclusive before there's any possibility. So I'm a wee bit betwixt and between. What I do believe is that there needs to be a continued debate, which is why we took the initiative of organising the conferences which we have organised.
Okay, so
that's what's important.
All right. Okay, so have you or have you not written formally to the Secretary of State asking for a border poll?
No, I haven't, and we haven't, and we may or may not do that depending on the outcome of our own deliberations.
We've not slightly put the cart before the horse here in criticising the Secretary of State for not agreeing to poll, which you haven't actually formally asked for. I
criticised his dismissal of the prospect of a border poll. A border poll, Conor, Mark, is inevitable. That's only a matter of timing. There's no question about if there's going to be a border poll. There will be a border poll. The question is when there will be a border poll. And what's important, as I've said 2 or 3 times, particularly in terms of unionism, the unionists are about, say, 2% of the entire population of the British state. And they have, I think, only peripheral, marginal influence. And an island organised society and a united Ireland and a new Ireland, unionists would be up to 20% of the population.
Yeah, I know, but that's, I mean,
real authority, real power,
of
real
course.
influence.
Yeah, that's an argument that's been rehearsed many times in the past. I mean, unionists would obviously differ with your mouths, I would have thought, pretty dramatically, and rather than being 2% of the United Kingdom, they would say that it's a fair assumption that an awful lot of people across the water would regard themselves in the final analysis as unionists, certainly a lot more than the 2% you're talking about. But actually, the people who would vote in a border poll are the people within Northern Ireland. I mean, that's the jurisdiction. Whether you like it or not, that's the people. That's the electorate. And unionists. Okay, so we're not talking about 2%. It's a bit of a red herring, really, isn't it? At the moment, it's more than 50%. The question is, do you think you can muster to your position more than 50%? And yes, I think a lot of people would think, probably in the current climate, the answer to that is a resounding no.
Well, again, it's a question of timing. First of all, I do have the confidence, and this isn't just an issue for Sinn Féin. Anyone who wants a stable, prosperous, peaceful future has to be up for looking at rearranging our society. We're already in transition. Most sensible people see the merits of a single island economy. They see the need for harmony and cooperation on issues like health, agriculture, the energy, any issue at all you can think of that affects society.
But you can still have that, with respect, Mr. Adams. You can still have that cooperation without actually having a united Ireland. I mean, there is this thing which we might refer to as Project Northern Ireland, and your party colleague Martin McGuinness is the Deputy First Minister here in Northern Ireland, and he seems to be pretty committed to making that work at the moment.
And he's also, like me, absolutely committed to making the job of work at the moment, work which is to stabilise and build good working and personal relationships with our unionist neighbours, but also, Martin McGuinness no more than me, as a united Irelander. Now, when we consider, where we've all come from, when we consider the conflict that some of us have lived through and survived, and there are lots of people who haven't, and that's another issue needs to be dealt with as part of reconciliation, which is the whole question of legacy. I just find more and more people, and I travel extensively across the island. I've been at all of those conferences I have referred to. I'm not suggesting for a moment that the unionist leaderships, or indeed the unionist parties, are ready to acquiesce or accept the United Ireland tomorrow morning. But their followers, the people who vote unionist at the moment, and the increasing number of people who don't vote for anybody, are very, very open to that suggestion, because they want a future where their kids can stay at home, they don't have to go off, their children don't have to go off to university in Scotland or Britain, that everyone can be at peace with one another, and more importantly, that we can have sustainable economic prosperity for everyone who lives here. And
we need to leave it there.
Continue to debate all of this out.
Okay, all right. Interesting to see if you do write that formal letter to the Secretary of State and what the response is to that formal request, should it be forthcoming. We've got to leave it there for now. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, the Sinn Féin President, Gerry Adams.